Arjuna Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Kṛṣṇa, Hare Kṛṣṇa, Kṛṣṇa Kṛṣṇa, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Hare Kṛṣṇa, Hare Kṛṣṇa, Kṛṣṇa Kṛṣṇa, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Hare Kṛṣṇa, Hare Kṛṣṇa, Kṛṣṇa Kṛṣṇa, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Kṛṣṇa Balaram, Kṛṣṇa Balaram, Kṛṣṇa Balaram, Jaya Kṛṣṇa Balaram. Jaya Radha Shama Sundara, Radha Shama Sundara Radhe. Jaya Gauranithai, 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 Jaya Gauranithai. Nithai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Prabhupada. कलियुग पावन हरिनाम संकीर्तन की, श्री प्रभुपाद की, ग्रंथराज भगवद गीता की। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। कृष्णाय वासुदेवाय देवकी नंदनाय च Nanda-gopa Kumaraya Govindaya Namo Namaha. So Hare Kṛṣṇa, this evening we are reading from Bhagavad Gita as it is, chapter 4, transcendental knowledge. So verse will be 15. Evam jñātvā kṛtam karma pūrvair mumukṣubhiḥ kuru karmaiva tasmāt tvam pūrvaiḥ kṛtam evaṁ jñātvā kṛtam karma pūrvair mumukṣubhiḥ kuru karmaiva tasmāt tvam pūrva-taraṁ kṛtam evaṁ jñātvā kṛtam karma pūrvair mumukṣubhiḥ kuru karmaiva tasmāt tvam pūrvaiḥ kṛtam. Kṛtam karma pūrvair mumukṣubhiḥ tasmāt tvam pūrvaiḥ-taram kṛtam evaṁ jñātvā kṛtam karma pūrvair mumukṣubhiḥ tasmāt tvam kṛtam evaṁ jñātvā kṛtam karma pūrvair mumukṣubhiḥ kṛtam tasmāt tvam pūrvair kṛtam jñātvā kṛtam mumukṣubhiḥ pūrvair kṛtam. Mataji's. evaṁ jñātvā kṛtam karma pūrvair mumukṣubhiḥ evaṁ jñātvā kṛtam karma pūrvair mumukṣubhiḥ kṛtam tasmāt tvam pūrvair-taram kṛtam evam. Thus, jñātvā, knowing well, kṛtam was performed, karma, work, pūrvair, by past authorities, api, indeed, mumukṣubhiḥ, who attained liberation, kuru, just perform, karma, prescribed duty, eva, certainly, tasmāt, therefore, tvam, you, pūrvair, by the predecessors, pūrva-taram, in the ancient times, kṛtam, as performed. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Purport ki. Translation. All the liberated souls in the ancient times acted with this understanding of my transcendental nature. Therefore, you should perform your duty following in their footsteps. Purport. There are two classes of men. Some of them are full of polluted material things within their hearts, and some of them are materially free. Krishna consciousness is especially beneficial for both these persons. Those who are full of dirty things can take to the line of Krishna consciousness for a gradual cleansing process, following the regulative principles of devotional service. Those who are already cleansed of the impurities may continue to act in the same Krishna consciousness so that others may follow their exemplary activities and thereby be benefited. Foolish persons who are neophytes in Krishna consciousness often want to retire from activities without having knowledge of Krishna consciousness. Arjuna's desire to retire from activities on the battlefield was not approved by the Lord. One need only know how to act. To retire from the activities of Krishna consciousness and to sit aloof, making a show of Krishna consciousness, is less important than actually engaging in the field of activities for the sake of Krishna. Arjuna is here advised to act in Krishna consciousness, following in the footsteps of the Lord's previous disciples, such as the sun god Vivashwan, as mentioned herein before. The Supreme Lord knows all his past activities, as well as those of persons who acted in Krishna consciousness in the past. Therefore, he recommends the acts of the sun god who learned this art from the Lord some millions of years before. All such students of Lord Kṛṣṇa are mentioned here as past liberated persons engaged in the discharge of duties allotted by Krishna. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmritam Mena Tasmai Sri Guruve Namaha. Sri Chaitanya Manobhistam Sthapitam Mena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Sita Padakarmalam Sri Gurun Vaishnavam Cha Sri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Advaitam Savadhutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Sri Vishakanutam Cha Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Sivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So we have a very nice verse here. So here Krishna is telling Arjuna just to follow in the footsteps of the previous people. Also there is a verse called evam parampara praptam. So Krishna is telling Arjuna that he should follow in the footsteps of the previous acharyas, like those who were liberated persons in the past. So here basically what we see, Krishna wants that Arjuna, he should not immaturely, he should leave the battlefield and just go in a secluded place like a pseudo-renunciant. Pseudo means a person who has renounced everything prematurely. So Prabhupada has given a very nice purport. So we'll try to elaborate on the purport of Prabhupada, what he has written. So Prabhupada explains that here Prabhupada has mentioned in the purport two classes of men. There are two classes of men. One category is that those who are materially polluted. Those who are materially polluted, and those that they are free from material contamination. Like one sick person, one healthy person. Okay? So here Prabhupada is categorizing the materialistic people into two categories. Those who take to devotional service. So what Krishna explains, Krishna consciousness, Prabhupada writes, is equally beneficial to both classes. So it is not that only these two categories. There can be devotees, people who are by birth, they can be devotees. But here Prabhupada is categorizing people into two categories. One is that materially polluted, and second is free from material contamination. So now Prabhupada what explains, Krishna consciousness is equally beneficial to both classes. Materially polluted, what Prabhupada writes, they take to Krishna consciousness as a gradual cleansing process for the first category. And what Prabhupada explains, those who are freed from material contamination, they may continue to act in Krishna consciousness to set perfect example. We should never consider, yes, now I have done 20, 30 years Krishna consciousness, now it is a high time for me retire somewhere. Having my nice room and some, very comfort zone. It is not like that. Until the time we leave this material world, even we become Paramahansa, still we have to be in Krishna consciousness. We have to carry on as long as we are in this material world. So what Prabhupada explains, that those who have perfected their lives, it is not that, okay, he is now Jivan Mukta Sa Uchyate. It is not like that. Also Krishna explains in Bhagavad Gita 18th chapter, Brahma Bhuta Prasannatma Na Sochati Na Kankshati. So in devotional service there can be three categories of devotees, Kanishta, Madhyama, Uttama. Even if one goes to the Uttama Adhikari level, so it is ideal that he should act as a Madhyama Adhikari. All of you are getting? If then what people will think he's just what you say, Sahajiya. If we try to show our symptoms, there are devotees, we can come to that level. Like nowadays you are eating mangoes, okay? The mangoes, how the mango becomes ripened, it is not that, it is not an overnight process. Prabhupada explains, Krishna consciousness is a gradual process, okay? Ado Shraddha Tatha Sadhu Sangha Tatha Bhajan Kriya Tatha Anartha Nivritti Syat. Later on there are more stages. Nishta, then we come to Bhav, then we come to Prema Bhakti. So this mangoes what you are eating nowadays, especially what they sell in the market, they are all ripened with some chemical. They are not good for health. But the real mangoes, they are plucked from the tree when they are completely ripened, and they are transferred and they are kept in a good place to get ripened. So similarly in Krishna consciousness, if one continues in his devotional service, a time will come, so one person he will come to know his standing in devotional service. Like an example is given that when you start eating your food, so gradually what happens after eating one or two chapatis, so you will feel little content. Tusti, you get some satisfaction. Pusti means you get some energy. So similarly, it is not that we come to devotional service. There is a saying in Hindi, Kal ka Chakravarti, Kal ka Bharti, Chakravarti, Naam Chakravarti, Kal ka Bharti, Naam Chakravarti. That means one who has come yesterday, joined in devotional service, it is not that he will overnight, he will become, no. Here Prabhupada explains that one has to gradually become free from the contamination. So we'll just explain with one story. So one time there was one thief. So what he thought, let me go on a pilgrimage with other people. So oftentimes you'll see there are some thieves, they get into a yatra party and they try to steal to the best of their capacity. If they are caught, bad luck. If they are not caught, good luck. So there was one thief, he joined one yatra, and these yatris, they were living in the night, they were sleeping in a big dharmashala. There is no privacy. So all they were sleeping around. So what happened in the middle of the night, so because he is thief by nature, so he was trying to steal, and in this way he manipulated all the bags here and there. So next day morning, when all the pilgrims, they woke up, they were surprised. Arey, where is my bag gone? So everyone was looking for their own bag because they were misplaced here and there. So as the thief was there, somehow he overcame his this thing, nature, and he said, yes, I am the person, please forgive me. I am by nature, I am a thief. So habit is that second nature, very difficult to come out. It is seen in India, especially in Delhi, big cities. Nowadays there are CCTV. And it is seen that even big millionaires, they steal. Even big millionaires, when they go to bookstall, a tiny book is not costing much, because habit is the second nature, and they are watching who's doing what. So sometimes they say, Arey, there is one book in your belly, take it out. So this is the nature in material world. So what happens if one studies himself in Krishna consciousness, so gradually all the anarthas, they will be eliminated. So material world, what we see, everyone, to err is human. So in a saying, there is a saying in English, to err means to do mistake is a human. There is no this thing, what you say, human being who has not done mistake in the material world. So Bhagavad Gita, Krishna explains, there is another verse in regard to this verse. In the 16th chapter, 16:23, 6:24, what Krishna explains, that yaha shastra vidim ustrijya vartate karma kartaha na sa siddhim apnoti na sukam na param gating. So now, because Arjuna wants to come out of his profession, because Arjuna is a Kshatriya and he is supposed to fight the war. And what the scriptures mention, that for a fighter, for a Kshatriya, the highest destination how we can get, either by winning the war or by dying in the war, he will attain the heaven. Okay? So but Arjuna, he is trying to run away. So what Krishna explains, that in 16:23, he who discards scriptural injunctions and acts according to his own whims attains neither perfection nor happiness nor supreme destination. So now here Krishna has told neither perfection nor happiness nor supreme destination. Okay? So not so easy. So also there are devotees who are trying to do devotional service as they like. Krishna consciousness as I like it. So whatever activities we undertake, there is a procedure laid down. If you want to make a halwa, if you roast the semolina, and if you don't add ghee, later on other ingredients, the halwa will never come out. Similarly, devotional service also, there are certain laid down principles. If we don't follow those principles, so we'll remain stagnant. So oftentimes, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati, Purport Guru Maharaj, so he used to tell some stories. So those stories, they are called Upadesha Upakyan. So there's one nice story, how we become stagnant in Krishna consciousness after some time. So one time, he explains through one story. So there was one marriage party. They were supposed to go to another village. They had to cross the Ganges in the night. So all the people from the bridegroom's side, they came after eating a full meal and they slept on the boat. And in the night, the boatman, he said, you can take night sleep. I'll row the boat throughout the night. So morning I'll take you to the other village, the other side. Maybe it was 100 kilometers. So what happened? So all the people from marriage party, they were having a nice sleep. And when they woke up in the morning, so in the morning twilight, what they saw, they have not gone anywhere. And they were stuck up there only. So now they were horrified. So but the boatman, he told, I am rowing the boat. I was rowing the boat throughout the night. So there is no fault on my part. So they were bewildered. Are kya hua? What happened? So somebody saw that anchor was not taken out from the river. So all the small ships or even big boats, big vessels in the ocean. So when it is put in one place, they put the anchor in the ground. So the anchor goes into the ground and it holds the ship. Let it be any big ship. So similarly, when we come in devotional service, what Prabhupada writes, when you are doing yajna, you put ghee, then you put water. That will not be a yajna. There will not be any flames coming out. There will be only smoke. So similarly, when we are doing devotional service, so gradually we have to renounce the material association of materialistic people, and with the passing of days we have to increase our bhajan, shravan, kirtan. So this way, if one is not becoming more and more serious in devotional service, so that is a stagnant devotional service. Although for namesake we are chanting, but there is no effect. So this way what happens? One becomes stagnant in devotional service. So here Kṛṣṇa further what he explains, tasmāt shastram pramanam te karya karyam vyavasthitau jñātvā shastram vidātnoktam karma kartum iharasi. What Kṛṣṇa explains, one should therefore understand what is duty and what is not duty by the regulations of the scriptures. Knowing such rules and regulations, one should act so that he may be gradually elevated. So now when we come to Krishna consciousness, so we should know that here Prabhupada writes that regulative principles. Prabhupada explains, following the regulative principles of devotional service. So all of you know the regulative principles of devotional service. There are 4 regulative principles, what Prabhupada said. There are 4 regulative principles of freedom. So only when we follow these 4 regulative principles, so we'll come to the standard of goodness. So for anything, there is a certain prerequisite, a required standard is there. So unless we follow these 4 regulative principles, we can't come to the required standard. There are many people, they are hanging around, so but they can't elevate themselves. They remain stagnant, and what they feel, I am there since 50 years, but no progress is made. So here what Prabhupada explains, foolish plans of retirement, escaping attitude. What Prabhupada writes in the Purport, foolish persons, they plan of retirement, escaping. This is a escapist. All of you know what is escapist means? Just overcoming the work. Hindi they say galamar. Galamar ka matlab hai not cutting the throat. One who is escaping the work. Such person they are called escapist in English. So what Purport writes, that neophytes in Krishna consciousness want to retire from activities without having knowledge of Krishna consciousness. You can hear again, neophytes in Krishna consciousness want to retire from activities without having knowledge of Krishna consciousness. So now what Prabhupada often he told his disciples, Vrindavan is only for 2 things. Does anyone knows? Vrindavan is for only 2 things. Does anyone know what is Vrindavan meant for? Doing bhajan and living this material body, not for other things. So at least we should know these things. Vrindavan is just for doing our devotional service, and living this body, because in Krishna, Bhagavad Gita, Krishna explains, Antakale chamam eva smaran muktva kalevaram. Even Prahlad Maharaj, he told his father, Vanam Gatva. Even Prahlad Maharaj, he told his father Hiranyakashipu. So Prabhupada writes that one should leave everything and one should go to Vrindavan. That doesn't mean you just retire in a neophyte stage. So if we live in Vrindavan in a neophyte stage, we are doing more and more offense. We are not doing anything tangible required. So what Prabhupada explains, that neophyte devotees in Krishna consciousness want to retire from activities without having knowledge of Krishna consciousness. So very difficult, sometimes we have to speak the truth. So now we can't imitate the pure devotees. Okay, we have come with good purpose. It is not that everyone is a neophyte. So everyone has come with good purpose. But unless we keep the good company of like-minded people, it is very difficult. What we see, Haridas Thakur, every day he was chanting 192 rounds. Okay? Raghunath Das Goswami, he came to Vrindavan when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu disappeared. So he came with the intention of leaving the body, but the devotees, they told, why don't you were living with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, why don't you some pastimes of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu? So Raghunath Das Goswami, it is mentioned that lifestyle, the regulative principles of Raghunath Das Goswami, they are like marking on the stones. So Raghunath Das Goswami he took 1 cup every day, buttermilk, chas. So if we imitate our acharyas, so we'll die. So Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, he explains that one time when Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati was running this Bagh Bazaar, Gaudiya Mutt, so one devotee he joined and he was having so much and a good time just chanting. So he did only chanting, no other services he liked. But the other devotees, what they thought, he's an escapist. He's an escapist. He doesn't want to do work. But later on, when Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati found, so he's genuinely chanting. So what he said, okay, now he may be chanting 64 rounds, all of you also start chanting 64 rounds. But they couldn't do that. They couldn't come to that person's equivalent. So they could understand, yes, they are neophytes, they can't imitate him. So there was this devotee, later on he was known as Krishnadas Babaji Maharaj. His samadhi is there in Nandagaon. So here also what we see, what Prabhupada explains, that Arjuna's desire to retire from battlefield is unwarranted. It is, in one sense, he is taking immature decision. Immature decision means sometimes we are bewildered what to do, what not to do. So here Prabhupada explains that Arjuna's desire to retire from battlefield, Prabhupada explains that Krishna, he is telling to retire, Prabhupada writes, from battlefield and sit aloof, making a show of Krishna consciousness is less important. Making a show, what Prabhupada explains, follow in the footsteps of previous acharyas in disciple succession. So Prabhupada, he has given the example of sun god Vivaswan. So we have a good number of examples in the Bhagavatam. We have the Manus, we have so many kings. Also in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna gives the example of King Janak. Krishna gives the example of King Janak. So also there is one nice example of Kardama Muni. All of you know, Kardama Muni, he was married to Dehavati, and also the Lord was born in house, Kapil Dev. So there was no reason for him to leave home. But still Kardama Muni, after his 50 years life, there is a aphorism, Panchasha Ordam Vanam Vrajet. After 50 years, one has to renounce the house. So Kardama Muni, he left home. So what was the necessity? The Lord was there in the home. But still, just to set an example. So Bhagavad Gita also Krishna explains, yad yad ashrita sreshtas tat tat evetaro jana sa yad pramanam kurute lokas tad anuvartate. So what Krishna is telling Arjuna, that he has to follow the previous acharyas. So because in material world what we see, that only those who are immature, they may take any decision in life unless they know the true value of life. So now Lord Kṛṣṇa knows all his past activities, here Purport writes, as well as a person who acted in Krishna consciousness in the past. Therefore, Purport explains, he and Krishna recommends the example of sun god Vivashvan. So now what we see, Vivashvan, there it is mentioned how the Bhagavad Gita came in disciplic succession. So what Prabhupada explains here, that yes, one has to follow in a disciplic succession, that is the way of life. What Prabhupada explains, who are referred here as past liberated souls. So Prabhupada explains, all the previous students of Lord Kṛṣṇa who engage in the discharge of duties adopted by Krishna. So there is a certain process which we have to adopt in our life. And Prabhupada gives one example from Chandogya Upanishad. There he explains, Acharyavan Purusho Veda. That means one who follows the disciplic succession of Acharyas knows the things as they are. So that's why it is mentioned in the Mahabharata that Mahajana Enagata Sa Panta. There is one verse in this one parva, Tarko Pratishta Shutoyo Bhinnam Nashasha Rishir Yasya Matam Na Bhinnam Dharmasya Tattvam Nihito Guhayam Mahajano Enagata Sa Panta. So this verse is from Mahabharata. So here Krishna wants Arjuna to follow in the footsteps of our Mahajans. In the Bhagavatam there is a mention of 12 Mahajans by Yamraji, beginning with Brahma, ending with who? Yamraji himself. Okay? So here the verse, Prabhupada explains, dry arguments are conclusive. A great personality whose opinions does not differ from others is not considered a great sage. Simply by studying the Vedas, which are variegated, one cannot come to the right path by which religious principles are understood. The solid truth of religious principle is hidden in the heart of unadulterated, self-realized person. Consequently, as the Shastras confirm, one should accept whatever progressive path the Mahajans advocate. So here basically it is mentioned that we have to follow in the footsteps of the Mahajans. So Prabhupada in Bhagavad Gita, in the introduction he writes that all Vedic knowledge is infallible. Vedic knowledge is infallible, and whatever is mentioned in the scriptures, there is no, it cannot be proved untruth. What Prabhupada writes, that all Vedic knowledge is infallible, and Hindus accept Vedic knowledge to be complete and infallible. So Prabhupada explains, for example, cow dung is the stool of an animal. And according to Smriti or Vedic injunction, if one touches the stool of an animal, he has to take a bath to purify himself. But in Vedic scriptures, cow dung is considered to be purifying agent. Okay? One might consider this to be contradictory. But it is accepted because it is a Vedic injunction. And indeed, by accepting this, one will not commit a mistake. Subsequently, it has been proved by modern science that cow dung contains all antiseptic properties. So Vedic knowledge is complete because it is above all doubts and mistakes. And Prabhupada also, he mentions about the conditioned souls. As I told, to err is human. So we have 4 defects. What Prabhupada writes, the words spoken by the Lords, they are called apaurushaya. Apaurushaya means there can't be any defect in that. Meaning they are different from the words spoken by persons of the mundane world. So Prabhupada writes, we are infected with 4 defects. Prabhupada explains, a mundaner is sure to commit mistakes. We will not go much detail. He is very invariably illusioned. He has the tendency to cheat others. And the 4th is limited by imperfect senses. So these are the 4 imperfections of human. So there was no fault on Arjuna's side in one sense. But this modern world, what is the disease of modern mankind? Always we are changing. Always we are trying to change. And oftentimes Prabhupada, he chastised his disciples for doing certain changes. What Prabhupada said, do as I did. Don't try to put your own things. So today in material world what we see, the modern mankind, he's gradually changing. Last maybe 200 years, we are completely changing from farming, from eating to entertainment. All our lifestyle is changing. So now many people, what food we are eating processed food. We are eating very less natural food. Cloth also we are putting synthetic cloth. So we are living in artificial rooms, which is not unnatural. So ignorance of law, no excuse in material world. So Krishna is trying to explain to Arjuna how he should overcome this tendency. And also Krishna has twice told Shreyan Swadharma Viguna Paradharma Bhayava. Krishna told Arjuna that yes, better to do one's own duty instead of doing others. So material world what we see, more or less in material world today, people, everyone thinks that he knows everything. And everyone thinks that yes, I am the perfect. So everyone thinks yes, I know everything. Oftentimes Prabhupada he said, when you ask the devotees, Indian people, they say yes, I know Krishna. That is the tendency, human tendency. But if we do the samskaras on our children, so gradually they will come to the standard. Like in the Bhagavatam there is mentioned that Rishabdev had 100 sons. So these 100 sons, out of that 9 they became sannyasis, Navayogendras. Few they became the Brahmanas and the others they became Kshatriyas. So one has a inborn nature. So that nature is gradually revealed by a person. But in material world we are brainwashed. In material world, more or less, we should know, like Prabhupada gives the example that if we want to know who's our father, who's the authority, certainly the mother. So similarly, if we want to lead a proper human life, the authority is the scripture, and authority is only known, the scriptures are known only by the Mahajans. Because they are following in the right steps and they know all the scriptures and they are following the scriptures and there is no defect in their thinking, doing whatever the Mahajans they are adopting way of life, there is no defect. So now we'll come to the commentary of our Acharyas. So Sridhar Swami he explains, beginning from the previous 4 verses, where Lord Kṛṣṇa explains in whatever way one worships him, then that offering he will accept. By this he refuted any conception of partiality of God and allowed him to be propounded by karma yoga or performance of prescribed Vedic activities according to status of position of life. Thus knowing that actions performed without egoism do not bind one to material nature. Ancient seekers of moksha or liberation, such as King Janaka, the father of Sita, who performed great deeds of yore for the benefit of world and for the purification of their minds. Therefore, Lord Kṛṣṇa is encouraging Arjuna to follow in their footsteps. So, Sridhar Swami is giving the example of a king, the father of Sita, King Janak. So, Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur, he writes, understanding how I have acted without being bound. Krishna, he explains about Krishna, that understanding how I have acted without being bound. Previously, persons like Janaka performed karma in order to promote it with the people. So Prabhupada gives one example oftentimes, that a bound person cannot bound another, unbind one person who is bound already. He cannot unbound another person. So Baldev Vidyabhushan here explains, knowing me in the sense Krishna, evam, previous persons desiring liberation, pūrva-mumukṣubhiḥ, my students such as Vivaswan, who followed the teachings, performed nishkama karma. You also should indeed perform action and not renounce again. Renounce action. If one is impure in heart, one should perform these actions to purify the heart, which leads to jnana. If one is already pure in heart, one should perform actions to teach others. This is what Prabhupada has quoted in the Purport. How did the previous persons perform the action? They performed actions following the actions of people much previous to them long ago. Pūrva-taram. So then, Madhvacharya, he explains, even after realizing the eternally transcendental position of Supreme Lord, one should still perform Vedic actions as a matter of principle following the tradition of the ancients. The performance of Vedic actions of the ancients means without desires of attachment. So, Ramanujacharya, he explains that understanding Lord Kṛṣṇa as delineated in the previous verses, did the ancient seers and sages perform Vedic activities dedicated to him and thus achieved moksha or liberation from the material existence. Krishna is encouraging Arjuna to perform karma yoga or prescribed Vedic activities as the ancients such as Vivaswan and Manu performed it in knowledge of him in the sense Krishna. So this way what we see, our acharyas, they are following in the footsteps of the previous acharyas. Like modern material world, whatever this electricity we get, it is coming from a powerhouse. So similarly the knowledge comes from the Lord. What Krishna explains to Arjuna, that yes, this knowledge was given to Vivaswan, then it went to Manu, then Ikshvaku. This way it is going in a disciplic succession. So material world, what we see today, more or less people, because they are getting more knowledge on this internet, what they think, yes, whatever knowledge they want, they can access any time. Supposing if the internet is off, where from you will access? Yes, material knowledge is what Bhaktivinoda Thakur he writes, Jada Vidya. Jada Vidya, it is a Mayar Gaurav. Mayar Gaurav means, supposing I get a degree with honors or PhD, so okay, one photo is taken, then you are given a degree. So that degree will last only until the time you have the job. After that job, you can't sell that degree to someone. Okay, this degree I have bought for, if you become a doctor, okay, you may and spend rupees nowadays like 2 to 3 crores to become a doctor. So can you sell that degree to someone? Okay, I am selling this degree. Is there anyone who wants to take this degree? No. So materialistic knowledge is a Jada Vidya. Jada Vidya means there is no life in that, like living and dead. But spiritual knowledge, this is a Raj Vidya, king of all knowledge. So here Arjuna is being told by the Lord that he should not whimsically renounce that his action, what he is supposed to. As a Kshatriya, he is also duty bound. Material world, what we see, everyone is duty bound. And no one can live without doing some karma. Like we are breathing. consciously, unconsciously we are breathing. So here, in today's verse, what Krishna explains, all liberated souls in ancient times acted with this understanding of my transcendental nature. Therefore, you should perform your duty, following in their footsteps, means predecessors, those who did in the past. So also in our samskaras, there is one samskar, that samskar is called punarvartan. Punarvartan means when we study in the Gurukul, after 25 years of age, one has to come back home and he has to continue what his father did. So punarvartan means the Guru will tell the disciple, yes, now your education is complete, you go back to your home and you follow in your father's footsteps, whatever the Guru can tell. So in that manner we should know that yes, one has to follow the proper authority and one has to follow Mahajana ena gatasya panta. So Prabhupada has quoted this verse oftentimes. So unless we follow the proper authority, there is no chance to be on the right path. Like when you are driving, always you are conscious how much you have covered the path. There are indicators of kilometer and the city or village. And the more you go towards your destination, the kilometer becomes less. And this way, a time will come when we will reach our destination. So similarly in devotional service, we should know that we have to follow in the footsteps of our ancestors. So material world, what we see, all the parents, they want to follow us in their footsteps. Goldsmith, he wants his son to become a goldsmith. But today there are some people, they want their children, they should become doctor, engineer, like that. So one time, one ISKCON sannyasi, he had gone to South India to one Sri Vaishnava's house. So this Sri Vaishnava, he told, I have two children. One is very highly intellectual. So he said, I want to make him an engineer. And this guy is a foolish. I'll make him a pujari. So this is what is materialistic way of thinking the people have. And that is the wrong. Irrespective of anyone. So this Vedic knowledge, it applies for all. It is not that those who are educated materially, they are exempt. There is nothing doing like that. So in one sense here, what Arjuna is being told, that he should follow in the footsteps of the previous acharyas. And Prabhupada, he quotes, he gives the example of Vivashwan and Manu. And most of our acharyas, they have quoted King Janak and Manu. So Hare Krishna. So we'll end the class here. So anyone has any comment regarding today's class? ग्रंथराज भगवद गीता की, श्रील प्रभुपाद की, हरे हरे कृष्ण।